We are indeed headed into a potentially very wild week when it comes to both the stock market and with regard to Tesla. We've got the jobs numbers at the end of the week. We've got other stuff going on, which I'll, of course, address tomorrow night in the Monday morning show. But I mean, with the Tesla numbers coming in on Tuesday, with the end of the month coming, I'm sorry, on Thursday, the end of the month coming on Tuesday, there's a lot going on. So let's take a look at why I think that we're, facing a kind of a two possible scenarios here. And it all has to do with the numbers. I know everybody's saying, hey, the numbers don't matter anymore, but they do matter to Wall Street. They do matter to a bunch of people out there that aren't carefully considering all the aspects of the Tesla story. They're still looking at the numbers. But there's more to the story this week, of course, than just the numbers. So let's just go through it, and then I'll give you my take on what I think is going to happen. And I've been extremely right for 6 days in a row. So probably going to be extremely wrong for 6 days. Anyway, how do we line up? We finished the week on Friday at an all-time high weekly close. Now, we've obviously closed higher during the middle of the week at 480. We closed at 480 on a particular day with a 488 in the intraday trade. But it turns out that for the week, we were already back down under 440. So 440 becomes the weekly high. We also closed at the high for the day on Friday. And we had a very strong run at the end of the day. Now, those are all positive things. We had a little bit of a sell-off in the overnights or the after hours, but it wasn't very big. It was just a small sell-off in the after hours. We had decent volume at about 100 million shares. We had 10 increases in price targets over the last roughly 10 days and no decreases. And a lot of those price targets now are in the 500 and even the 600. I think two are at 600, some others in the mid 500s, and then at least one more at 500. So, but a lot of increases, and a lot of these increases were substantial, 25% increases. Thus far, the street average is still under 450, depending on who you believe. It's at 447 or 445 or 431. Anyway, but all the street averages, no matter who you believe, is at under 450. Whisper numbers are at around 170,000 from quite a few folks that are very astute, including Troy Teslike. He's above 170. Last time I checked, 172. We don't know where it's going to come in, but there's also lots of folks that are thinking it'll be above 500. Now, none of these people that are making these estimates count energy storage estimates, that none of them are saying, well, we think, except me, I've been talking about it for weeks, but if we hit 13.5 gigabytes of storage being shipped or deployed, that would be a 50% increase in profit compared to quarter two. And then we're likely to see a doubling of quarter two in quarter four. So, this is not insignificant. There's a tremendous amount of profit there. But nobody's paying attention to that. But all of a sudden, well, if we hit 13 or 14 or something in that range, maybe people will be paying attention. Now, at any moment, anytime next week, anytime the week after that, but let's talk about next week. Anytime next week, we could have announcements about robotaxi. You don't know. I mean, every single day is a possible announcement about some aspect of the rollout, something different that they're doing, some new aspect to it. We could have those happening all next week. We never know when those are going to hit. This week, we will see lots and lots of new videos by individuals doing those videos about the FSD 14, because the FSD 14, according to Elon Musk, is going to roll out this week. And so those videos are going to start popping up. And he says it's a wide early release, whatever a wide early release. So some people think that means it's an early release, which means it only goes to a certain subset, but this will be a wide version of that early release. I don't know. One way or the other, there's going to be lots of videos, and hopefully, prayerfully, those videos will be good news, and it will be more reasons why people will jump on the bandwagon. Tesla is pushing super hard on getting the numbers in by Thursday. Now, of course, people need to, the numbers that we will see on Thursday will be finalized on Tuesday night at midnight, someplace in the country, I guess east. Anyway, those numbers will be finalized on Tuesday. We will get to see them on Thursday. But then folks can still continue to place orders up until Tuesday, even though they won't receive delivery until much later. And Tesla is pushing hard on that with advertising, actually, mostly social media related. So that will be continuing. With all of that, we are still up against a very stiff trading barrier at 440. There's no denying it. Now, I 100% believe we will eventually crush this 440 and be all the way back up to all-time highs, but we could be looking at a situation where this would be hard to plow through, and we could see a couple of setbacks before we get to before we do break through permanently. But having said that, my best guess is that we will start moving ahead of that 440 around 450 before Thursday. Now, listen, it could go a lot crazier than that, but until we get that number, or unless there's no, now we could have some other stuff. Troy will come out with his new numbers on Monday. People do pay attention to what Troy says. And the China numbers will come out Monday night. That could also have an impact on what people think is going to happen on Thursday. I mean, it should have an impact. So, and there could be other people, there could be other analysts raising their numbers officially, because that's what they do. Very close to the very end, just before the announcement, some of the analysts will give increases or give decreases or make their estimates known. And then there will be the folks within the Tesla community that will also talk about their estimates over those few days. So all of those things obviously could cause us to start moving closer and closer to, let's say, 450. It could be even higher. I think there's a number. I think there's another kind of one of these technical things at around 467. So it is possible that if we do really have a run because there's a great announcement with regard to numbers, or there's a great announcement with regard to robotaxi, we could move up into that 467 range. I don't think we get back to all-time highs before Thursday. That would be a surprise to me. Now, what if the numbers come in soft? Or what if there's bad news over these next few days? Or the combination of those two things? And what if we get an additional bad news on Friday and the employment numbers are as strong as would have been indicated by last Thursday's first initial unemployment numbers? Well, all of those things, of course, could crush all of our hopes and dreams, or it could make more buying opportunities. I don't think we drop below 410 if we do have any kind of negative news. If the numbers are not as good as hoped on Thursday, we get something really bad. It's possible. We could be back down testing 390. There's another number I kind of forget now, but 390 is a real possibility. 400, of course, 410, 400, 390, those would all be possible times where we could see an attempt to get a floor under us. 410 is very stiff. 423, those are ones that are very, very tough to break under. All right, so that's the range. Okay, I'm saying it's 410 to 467. That is the possibles for next week. I think we will be mostly positive Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday as we go into the number announced on Thursday morning. All right. Elon Musk says in a reply to based Jeff Bezos, Tesla is working hard on scaling Optimus. Mario Nawfal is recounting his words from the recent All-In Summit where he said, I'm spending many brain cycles on scaling Optimus production. We're finalizing the design of Optimus version 3. That really is going to be a very remarkable robot. It will have essentially the manual dexterity of a human, meaning a very complex hand, and an AI mind that can navigate and comprehend reality, and it will be made in very high volume. Now, if you see other robotics companies, they're missing those three things. Or I think what would have been a better way to say this is they might be getting one of those right, but the other two they can't do. So pick one that they possibly have the capability, but the other two not so much. He says those are the three really hard things. And of course, he's also mentioned before that amongst those hard things, the hand being the hardest. He says, I spend actually at this point more of my mental cycles than anything else, any other single thing on Optimus. That's solving for real world AI. There's no supply chain that exists for humanoid robots, so we have to recreate it from scratch, which requires a lot of vertical integration. To which Jeff Lutz, the number one guy on vertical integration, says, besides having tight tolerances and non-existent supply chains to create, localizing Optimus supply from day one and or vertically integrating it makes it exponentially more difficult. So there's a lot to know, and we won't know for a very long time. Like, how many different actuators are they actually going to be using? We know that it's like over 50 actuators in the bot. Not sure how many over 50, but something over 50, which is way more than Scott and I were looking at a year ago. But if there's over 50 actuators and there's 30 different kinds, that would make it even more complex. Now, if it turns out that 25 of those are all exactly the same actuator, which is possible because of all the actuators that are going to be used in the hand and the arm, it's possible that a bunch of those actuators are exactly the same. Well, that'll make it easier to get a perfect, really work that one out to where it's amazing. But you still, I don't care what you're ramping up. If you're ramping it up into the tens or hundreds of thousands or millions, which is what we're going to have for actuators. Okay, remember, so making 1 million bots is hard. But think about if you have to make 50 million actuators to do that. That's kind of the way to think about this. Okay, so that's the complication here. That's the difficult part. All right, this is Randy Kirk, by the way. Seth Golden says this: the gains in aggregate consumption also obscure the sharp divide among consumers and the growing reliance on top earners. Okay, we're seeing great growth numbers. Okay, I'll talk about that more in a minute because we have the new GDP numbers, the new GDP now numbers from the Atlanta Fed. So he's kind of responding to that. He says, but he was also responding to Moody's. Moody's recently estimated that the bottom 80% of earners have merely spent right in line with inflation since the pandemic, while the top 20% are driving growth. Now, I would say to Seth and to Moody's that this is changing. We are seeing that earnings are outstripping inflation month after month. And when you have earnings outstripping inflation month after month, it may not show up the first month, the second month, the third month, but if you continue to do it month after month, that those earnings are eventually going to outstrip inflation by enough to where even the lowest end consumers, even the bottom of the rung, are going to be able to go out and spend a bit more. They're going to be a little more relaxed about their spending. They will be able to, get over to McDonald's more often. And that's a real thing. Is when people are cutting back on their trips to McDonald's, that is an economic indicator. Seth goes on to say, as long as they keep spending, meaning those top income earners, the economy should avoid recession. But if they turn more cautious for whatever reason, the economy has a big problem. So we'll see. We'll see how that works out. But for right now, I think everything is looking roses for the economy, much better than expected. Listen to this now. The GDP Now indicator came out yesterday morning, and it now estimates, are you ready? Seasonally adjusted rate, third quarter of 2025 is now 3.9%. September, just a couple of weeks ago, well, the last one we saw was 3.3. And after recent releases from the U.S. Census Bureau, the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, and the National Association of Realtors, a decrease in the nowcast of third quarter real gross private domestic investment growth from 6.4 to 4.1. So the third quarter real gross private domestic investment went down, but not down totally. It went from 6.4 up to only 4.1% up. And that decrease, however, was more than offset by increased in the third quarter real personal consumption's expenditure growth from 2.7 to 3.4%. and the contribution of net exports to third quarter real GDP from 0.08% to 0.58%. So we have massive, massive increases in these areas that are causing the GDP now to now be up at 3.9%. So some folks are suggesting we could be looking at the real third quarter numbers as being 4% or more in terms of an increase. That would be crazy because so many people are saying, oh, the economy is in terrible shape. The truth is the economy is not in terrible shape. Parts of the economy, as I've said here over and over and over again, parts of the economy are not in great shape, but lots and lots of the economy is doing very, 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 very well, thank you. And so right now, of course, you know what I'm looking for. I keep saying it over and over. We need the Fed to cut rates. I love to have the bond rates come down. You know this. I talk about it every day. Love to have the bond rates come down, but the bond rates, as important as they are, in order to get housing going again, the bond rates are not as important right now as the Fed funds rate, because the Fed funds rate is going to feed small company manufacturing, small business, Main Street businesses, regional commercial real estate, which has been hurting, small local banks. Transportation will get better if we see durables, which durables would go up. If the Fed funds rate comes down, the durable sales will go up, and that will help not only durables, but also manufacturing. So we get all of those different areas of the economy that have been in recession, all of them get a nice boost, okay? And this would be great. But the housing, that's going to require the interest rates to come down on that 10-year and the 20 and the 30, but the 10-year is the one that's the most important. And right now, it's just stubbornly staying above 4%. I still believe that it will come down. I really did some deep studying on this over the last couple of days, asking Grok for analysis of various different times in history and various different times with regard to how the bonds are measured. There are three different ways, three different pieces. I mean, it's more complex than that, but there are three different things that go into how the bonds kind of are figured out. And I knew all three of those. In fact, I prompted Grok with all three of those different ways. Grok said, well, it's a little even more complicated than that, and gave me a few more ideas. But I think the levels right now, at the end of the day, what Grok was saying was, they're not that crazy. Given that even if inflation is at 2%, 4.25 is not that crazy. 4.2 is not that crazy. We really might need inflation to be a little under 2%, and really have the bond folks believe it for it to get back down to 3.9, 3.95, 3.75. So that's one way of looking at it. Now there is a range above the inflation rate that the bond people like to make. And that has also to do with I guess what you would call the worry about future inflation. But right now, if anything, sophisticated bond buyers should be thinking that future inflation is going to be way less because of AI, robotics, the stuff we've been talking about. And believe me, the bond buyers are the most sophisticated group out there. Okay, that's just a fact. They are just more sophisticated. I don't know how to explain it exactly, because you say, well, the stock people. The stock people, there's a lot of traders and a lot of people in that industry that are really all about, making decisions on a second-by-second basis and trying to, do things to trick the market, where the bond players are way more about the fundamentals. There's more to it than that, but that'll have to be enough for today. All right. That's all I've got for you right now. We've got Truflation today. I guess I do have the Truflation numbers for you. The Truflation numbers right now came in at, actually Truflation did a post today. They said since last week, inflation has fallen from 2.24 to 2.04. So inflation is going down. That's huge in that shorter period of time. The decrease in inflation was observed mainly in four categories: education, housing. We've been talking about that. Housing is going down, down, down. household and daily items. And the other category be things like personal things like deodorants and things like that. It said, although markets are expecting more rate cuts this year, the recent GDP and PCE releases have brought uncertainty about it happening. But I think that they're still going to. I still believe they're going to happen. If they don't, I think there's a chance that Trump will fire Powell anyway and see what the Supreme Court has to say. All right, let's see. Later on tonight, we have got what do we have tonight? We have Brian Wang. Brian Wang tonight. Okay, now this is a really important one. You really need to watch this. It's not going to be about Tesla very much. I mean, it'll be about Tesla, but it's not really about Tesla. It's really about the population problem. And I know some of us are going to be long dead before the population problem actually impacts us on a daily basis. But the truth is, not so much, because it's already impacting Japan. It's going to impact North Korea. It's going to impact China. These countries around the world that have these low population rates. So Brian has dug into it. He's gone into great detail. So if you're interested in understanding the economy, you've got to understand the world economy, not just the U.S. economy. And so that's why I'm doing this special tonight with Brian with regard to population. I just encourage you to listen to it. I think you'll find it valuable. Okay, that's all I got tonight. And what about earlier this morning? The last time I checked anyway, you all weren't watching the 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐝𝐸𝐲 video? I mean, come on, 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐝𝐸𝐲? No, this was a really good video. If you didn't watch it already, I'm going to put the card up. I mean, no. You know, CERN's always really good. Maybe my thumbnail was no good. Maybe my title wasn't that great. No, this was a very good video talking about a lot of the AI stuff and how it's impacting in terms of stock market. I mean, no. This was a really, really good video. You need to go back and watch it. So the card will be right up there. All right, now I'm gonna say goodbye. It's been great talking to you.